Hey, what's going on guys? So welcome back to another video. Now in this video, we're going to be creating a to-do app or to-do list in HTML5, CSS3 and then JavaScript. Now as you can see in this input section, I'll just add in a few fake tasks so that you can see what's going on. First I'll write buy a coffee and then this plus icon. When I click it, as you can see, my task gets added below. Then I'll add drinking water, getting sleep, doing homeworks, and then uploading a video. Now as you can see, this is the maximum height that our to-do app can have, and so once we have more tasks, that is more than 4 tasks, it would have the scrolling effect which would let you see the rest of the task. Now you have this check mark over here which basically allows you to keep track of whichever task you have already completed and which you haven't done, and then this trash or delete button to delete the task that you do not need any longer. Now even when I refresh or reload the browser, you can see that my tasks are still in there because we're going to be using local storage to add our task and then to remove those with delete button. So in our index.html file, what I'm going to do is first I'll hit exclamation and hit enter. I'll have the boiler template, and then in the title I'll just write to do app, and then I'll grab onto the font awesome link and then I'll just paste it in here, and then I'll also link my style.css file and then my script.js file here. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'll add a container div with class of container, and then inside here I'll add h1, which would say to do app or to do list, whatever you may name, and then I'll add input field div, inside which I'm gonna add the input section where you're gonna type your tasks. So I'll add a placeholder saying type your tasks, and then I'll also add a button, the plus button that you have seen button, and with the class of add, and I'll add the plus font awesome icon. So this is what it would look. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'll add a div of to do, and I'll add ul of to do list, and just in a moment I will show you why I have these two divs, these two elements. And now what I'm going to do is I'll head over to my style.css file, and then first what I'm going to do is I'll remove margin and padding, the default one, and then I'll add box sizing to border box and font family to quick sans, which I have grabbed on from the Google Fonts. And once I have these two done, now I'm gonna go to the body, and what I'm gonna do is first I'll change the background to this, and then I'll add a min height of 100 viewport height, and then a width of 100 viewport width, and I'll add a display flex and justify content center and align items center just to get everything in the center. Once I have it done, I'll grab onto the container which has all the stuff, and I'll style this. First what I'm going to do is I'll add a max height of 550 pixels and a width of 450 pixels, and then I'll add display flex and flex direction column, as by default it has the row, so I'll just add flex to column, and then I'll add justify content and align items to center, and then I'll add a border of 2 pixels solid black just so you can see what's going on. The reason we have the max height to 550 pixels is because when we would dynamically add the items, it would go on increasing, and then when it hits 500 pixel, and then it's gonna stop increasing, and then we can have a different effect, the scrolling one. Add padding and border radius, and then I'll change the background to the one that the body has, and then I'll start with the box shadow. So I'll use 28 pixels and 56 for the blur, and I'll add the color. Now this is what it would have on the lower part, on the right hand side and on the bottom of the box, and then I'll add minus 28 pixels and 56 pixels on the top, okay, on the top and left side of the box. Once I have these two done, I'm going to change the border radius to 30, and I'll just remove the border. And now what I'm going to do is I'll style the input field. First, I'll change the margin to top of 30 pixels, margin top to 30 pixels, and then I'll go to the input box and I'll change the height to 40 pixels and a width of 350 pixels and a border radius of around 5 pixels. And now I'm gonna add in the background to what the body has, this, and then I'll add box shadow. I'll just copy this and then I'll just paste it in here. Okay, now this looks pretty weird. What I'm gonna do is I'll add inset to both so that the box shadow is not outside now. It kind of has the effect of having the box look side, okay, sort of like the shadows would be now inside. And then I have also reduced the value to 5 pixel, 5 pixel and 10 pixels, and the bottom one as -5 pixels, -5 pixels and 10 pixels. Now I'll add outline to none so that when you click you don't have that outline, and then I'll add a font size of 17 pixels. Now I'm gonna add a padding of 20 pixels and a border. So we're gonna see which color looks better. Okay, and then next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna style this type your task, which doesn't look that distinctive to our eyes, so we're gonna change the color to black. And the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna style this plus button. So we're gonna add height and width of 38 pixels and 30 pixels and a border radius to around 10 pixels or so. And then we're gonna add the default background. And now for the box on the right and bottom, we're gonna have 5 pixel each and 10 pixel of the spread and this. And for the bottom, for the right and top, we're gonna have -5 pixels and -5 pixels and of this color, and we're gonna have outline none and border none. We're gonna add font size of 20 pixels, and this looks better now. Now we're gonna go and style the to-do list, which is our UL, and by default they have those bullet points when you add in new LIs inside of them, so we're gonna remove that, and we're gonna add in a width of 400, height of 350 pixels. And then just so you can see the height of this, I'm gonna add a border and a padding of 0 so that by default the UL doesn't have any kind of padding. And so I'll add the direction to column, as by default they have the row. Now just to explain, I'll add a few LI, and I'll add justify content flex start, and then overflow Y auto, so that when you add in new items, when they start to overflow, you're gonna have that scroll bar so that the items wouldn't go out of the UL but would stay inside and you can scroll and check them out. I'll just copy this box shadow and then I'll just paste it in here. I'll remove the border now, and I'll add the height to max height so that when you have fewer items, so it doesn't take unnecessarily that 350 pixel of height. Okay, and I'll add a class of to-do list items to our LIs so that when we add new items from JavaScript, so that we know that our LIs need to have this proper styling, And so we're going to add in this class to our items from JavaScript. And so first we're going to style this. We're going to have margin of 20 pixels, a font size of around 20 pixels, and a padding this, and then a border radius of 5. Now background would be just usual, the default one, and I'll just copy paste the box shadow. Okay, now this has started to look like our project version. Now I'm gonna add border radius, which unfortunately we have already added over there, so I've just added it twice. Yeah, and so I have added the position relative and padding to 10 pixels. And now as you can see, you have this scroll bar. We're going to remove that scroll bar with this WebKit scroll bar, and width to 0 and background to transparent. And now we're going to add in our done button, which is the check, and then our delete button inside the li. So in our HTML, we're going to add a button with the class of done, and then inside here we're going to have the checkmark icon of font awesome, and then I'll just add in the trash icon, the button with the trash, which would be our delete button. I'll copy and paste it here a few more times. Okay, now you can see that, and we're gonna start styling our button. First we're gonna have buttons, the position of them as absolute, font size of 20 pixels, height 100%, and we want them to have top 0 and border radius of 10 pixels, background the default one, and box shadow 5 pixel, 10 pixels. So this is going to be on the right and bottom, and then for the left and top we're going to have this color. We're going to have outline none. Okay, and then border none. Now we want them to be on the right side, so first we're gonna style the trash button, the checkmark button. So we're gonna add right to 40 pixels and color to this. Okay, and then we're gonna add in our. So now we're gonna have to do something different. So first what I'm gonna do is I'll remove the border from the input section. Okay, border none. Yeah, and then to this plus button we'll just add in a bit of margin on the left of 10 pixels. Now looks better. And for the check mark, for the check, and for this trash button, we're gonna have a bit of padding to each of them, and so we're gonna add that just in a bit. First let's style the delete, write this and color to black. Okay, now we're gonna add padding 10 pixels. Now this looks better. The only thing that we need to do is we need to add a bit more space. So what this 40 would make that to 45. Okay, now they have space. So this has started to look like our project version. Now what I'm going to do is, to this check marks, when we click on them, we want them to have this white color. So I'll just change the color to white, and I have this active state here, and so I'll add transition to 0.3 second ease. So now we're gonna toggle that active state via JavaScript. So now I have added the JavaScript to this file already. So whenever we click onto each of these buttons, we're gonna have that effect, but we're gonna write our own fresh new JavaScript. So now the only thing that we need to do is change the pointer events of the I tag. So we don't want them to have any pointer event, so we're gonna have that removed. And so as you can see, we have the JavaScript, so when we click, they change the color, okay, as you can see. And so we're gonna add in our fresh new JavaScript. So that's it for the styling. Now we're gonna head over to JavaScript. Okay, so in our JavaScript, we have added the respective variables for the respective DOM elements and then stored them. And now here I'm gonna add to the plus button, I'm gonna add an event listener. So the plus button is add task, and so I'm gonna add an event listener for the click. And so the function would be add task to do, which basically would allow us to add tasks. So first I'm gonna check if the input.value is basically not empty. So if that's not empty, then we're gonna fire off our function whenever we click onto the plus button. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is create the list item, which we have already styled. So this is gonna be a list which would have a class of to-do list item, which we have styled in our CSS. So we're gonna just give it a name, a class name of to-do list item. And the next thing that we're gonna do is create the span. This span would now contain the text for that specific task. So this is going to be a span, and we're going to add a class list of to do task. And then the inner HTML of this would be what we get from the input.value. We can store that in this, and then this is what we would see on the LIs or the respective task. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'll add in the function, the set local function, which we're going to create later on. So I'll just comment out and then I'll just write set local. Okay, and so next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create the done task, basically the check box, the button with the check mark. And so this is going to be a button, and this is going to have a class list of done. Okay, so first I'm going to copy paste the inner HTML, which is basically the check mark. So this is going to be in the inner HTML section, and then this is going to have a class list of done. So once we have the done task done, we're going to create the delete button. So we're going to call this delete task, and then the same way we're going to add in the inner HTML, and then we're going to add the class. Now all that's left is to append all these stuff inside the UL, which we have already grabbed. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to append our text to the to-do list item, which is the LI, and then we also want to append our done task and the delete task to our to-do list item, which is the LI. And then we want to append this LI inside the to-do list, which is the UL. So once it's done, what we want to do is when we click on the button, we want the input value to get removed. And so now we're going to remove all this from our HTML. Now when we start, let's add few tasks. Hello world. As you can see, this gets added automatically when we click onto the plus icon. Okay, alright, so now we're gonna add this check mark and the delete functionality. So for this, I'll add an event listener to the UL, so to the to-do list, So we're gonna listen for a click, and then we're gonna have this done remove function. So I'm gonna write function done remove, and then we're gonna check for an event. So first I'm gonna create a variable of li, and then this would be the target, so basically where we are clicking. And so basically we're gonna see if the place where we click is or has a class of delete. Okay, if that has a class of delete, then that means that we are clicking onto the delete button. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and grab onto the parent element, and then we just want to remove that. Okay, and if we click onto this check button, then what we want to check is basically we want to check if that has a class of done, and if that's the check button, then we're going to grab onto that, and we want to add the active state. So basically we want to toggle that with the active state. Okay, and so now we can remove stuff and use the check button. Now all that's left is to add the functionality of our local storage. So first I'm going to add a function of setLocal to add items to our local storage. So this is going to take item as a parameter, and so I have here a variable of to-dos. And so first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to check if our local storage already has item with to-dos. Okay, if that's null, then we're going to create an empty array, or else we're going to use this to-do variable, and then we're going to store whatever is in there in our local storage. Now for the items that we add, we just want to push that into our to-dos array, and once that's done, we just want to set that in our local storage. Now we're going to create a function to get stuff from our local storage if our local storage already has any task. So I'm going to copy and paste this. So basically we're going to check if this has anything. So if it has, then we're going to run a for each loop, and then for each item that it gets from the local storage, we're going to just carry out the stuff that we did in the add to do task. We're going to carry out the same stuff. So I'll just copy that, and then I'll just paste it in here. So instead of this input value, now we would add item from the local storage. Okay, and now in this we're going to remove the comments, and now let's create the variable which would be responsible, the function which would be responsible for the removal of items from our local storage. So I'm going to name it as remove local, and first I'm going to create the usual, the variable this to do's, and then I'll just copy and paste. So we're going to check if this has anything, and so now we're going to check of which delete button we click, and then we're going to go to its parent element, and then we're going to grab onto the inner text, and then from the to-dos we're going to splice that and set that local storage. And now here, whenever we remove that, we also want to remove that from our local storage. So I'm going to call remove local function in the done remove function. Okay, now when I click it, it doesn't work because we have to add one more event listener. That is, if we have anything in our local storage, then we want to run that get local function. So we're going to check DOM content loaded. So when everything gets loaded, we're going to do that. And here we're going to write set local. Okay, and now when we do it, we can see that we are pretty much adding new items. You can check your local storage. Now this has how are you, and that when you click it, it gets removed.